All right, guys, we are going to start working with finding the greatest common factor. So when I look at 14x and 35x to the cubed, I've got to look at 14 and 35 and determine what the greatest common factor is between those two numbers. What do they both have in common? And the answer is, well, 7 goes into 14 and 7 goes into 35. Is there something larger that would go into both of them? So would 14 does go into 14, but does 14 go into 38? And if you enter it into a calculator, you would find no. So the largest number is 7. Now you have to look at the x's. So you are looking for the x with the smallest degree, and so that is x. So the greatest common factor here would be 7x. Now you might get 3 terms. Find the greatest common factor of these 3 terms: 45x to the 4th, negative 15x to the 5th, and 5x to the 6th. Again, I will start with the numbers. What do all 3 of these numbers have in common? And this is a really pretty one, and you can see that they all have 5 in common. Now we have to deal with those x's. What about the x's? What do they all have in common? Well, 5's less than 6, but 4 is less than 5, so it's x to the 4th. Okay, here we're going to factor out the greatest common factor from this polynomial. So from this expression, you got to say, what do they both have in common? Well, here I have a 2, and does 2 go into 6? Yes, so I'm going to pull that 2 out. Now, when I pull that 2 out, what do I have left? Well, that's 6 plus, well, 2 goes into 6 3 times. So you got 2 parentheses x plus 3. And the way to check that is you do 2x times 2 times x, which gives you 2x, and 2 times 3, which gives you plus 6. Now let's look at 48xy and 16x squared. Okay, again, I always start with the numbers. What do they have in common? What's the largest number? Well, they both have 2 in common. What about 4? 4 goes into 16. 4 goes into 48. What about 6? 6 does not go into 16, so 6 is out. 8 goes into 16. Does 8 go into 48? It does. It goes in 6 times. What about 16? Does 16 go into 48? And the answer is actually yes. 16 goes into 48 3 times. So your number would be 16. Then let's look, and I do this in alphabetical descending order. So now I'm going to look at my x's, and the lowest one is x. So I'm going to pull that out. And then I'm going to look at y's. Do they both have y's in common? No. So then I'm going to do parentheses. 16 goes into 48 3 times. X divided by x leaves us 0 x's and y. So you have 3y. Plus 16 goes in 16, 1. You can put that 1 or you don't have to. Most people, and I think Math Excel would only accept this. Okay, then you check. 16 times 3 is 48 48xy plus 16 times the 1, and then the x's become squared. Okay, what about this? Can you factor out the greatest common factor here? Well, instead of it being a single variable, this time we have a whole parentheses that are the same. You have y plus 3. So we can factor out a y plus 3 just like we have on anything else. They both are in common. And what do we have left? Well, we have x minus 5. Okay? And this is the start of factor by grouping, which I have a few more examples of. So for example, if you get something that has 4 terms, you're going to probably want to factor by grouping. So you look at 2x plus 6, what do they have in common? I would say 2, leaving you x plus 3. And then what does xy plus 3y have in common? Well, they have a y. So you're going to go y, x plus 3. Okay, now just like the previous problem, I have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3. So I can continue to factor. So then I would have x plus 3 parentheses 2 plus y. And you can rewrite them. I always like to put the variable first, so I might have done y plus 2. They are the same thing, so it doesn't matter. It'll all work out. All right, let's look at this guy. Again, it's a 4-term polynomial, and when it's 4 terms, you want to look into factor by grouping. So I'm going to put parentheses around the first 2 terms and parentheses around the second 2 terms. What do the first 2 terms have in common? Well, they both have x, so I'm going to pull out that x, leaving me 8x plus 9y. All right, then I'm going to go look at these other ones. What do they both have in common? 8 and 9 have nothing in common. X and y have nothing in common. Well, they always have that 1. So I'm just going to put a 1 as a placeholder. So I have 8x plus 9y. If I have that and that, they are the same. So I'm going to copy them. 8x plus 9y. Parentheses, x plus 1. Okay? So even though we couldn't pull anything greater than 1, we still have that 1 there. And you can FOIL these to determine whether or not you have the right answer. Okay, last example. Again, we're going to factor by grouping. So parentheses, parentheses. So here, what do they have in common? Well, the number I see is 2. The variables I see is x. So that leaves me x minus 9y minus, what do 7 and 63 have in common? 7. The only thing I want to note to you guys is, see how this is negative? That negative becomes positive here because it was minus 7x, so it's now just a positive 7x. But this guy here, when I divide by negative 7, that leaves me minus negative 9y. Okay? So just note that that turns in. So if you get a problem and it's showing that if you have that plus going on right there, remember that you maybe didn't pull out the negative all the way through like this, and so go back and check both of them just in case you can get them, because once again we have something similar. So that's x minus 9y parentheses 2x minus 7. Okay. Email me if you have any questions or ask me in class.